Well, Mike, I just love your story, and I feel like we should just start with the beginning. Why did you decide to transition from running a successful marketing agency to coaching solopreneurs? Kind of a different shtick.
Passion, 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 passion. I built my agency out of this desperate need to leave this corporate environment that I was in. I didn't even really know what I was going to stumble on until I found it. And I ran it for a total of 13 years. And honestly, by year 8, 9, like I was kind of done, and I had employees who were like my significant other and my family members. So I kept it longer than I wanted to, and I just had no desire, no passion to keep running it. But I had, the coaching thing kind of really lit me up, and finally I had the courage to separate myself and move out of it.
And was that because you yourself had burnout, or did you just lose interest in the marketing world? What was it that you were like, time to go?
Yeah, I think with as a marketing agency, you're only as good as your best performing last month, you know? And I think the other thing is that with the market being so flooded with vendors, not to say the coaching market's not saturated, but with marketing, it's like, oh, well, this person told me they could do this for me on TikTok. And then this person said I could blow up on my YouTube. And there's only so much budget and bandwidth that people have for marketing. So is this constant like fighting off of other ideas, even when like we were very calculated in how we showed profitability and performance. So like we were making people money and they were still like, well, I saw this video and I think we got to move to TikTok now. And like I just kind of got exhausted by the conversation, to be honest.
Yep, we
I
hear
can
you
believe
on
it.
that. Well, so we're joking because you're like, well, it's not that the coaching world isn't saturated, but you obviously have something that sets you apart, which is why you're continuing to do this now. So, what strategies do you recommend for solopreneurs who want to scale their businesses without compromising on that work life balance I was alluding to? Um, and how do you help them avoid burnout?
So I think it starts with vision. I think a lot of problems with solopreneurs is that they worked at a company before and they took that company's formula and made it their job now. Or they looked at a competitor and they're like, well, this is how they do it. So I just do it in this similar way. Then I have a business. And a lot of people don't start with how the business can serve their lifestyle. And they don't even really think about like, what do I want this thing to look like? And so what ends up typically happening is we convolute our service in a massive way. Okay, well, I should add these extra things and these bonuses and these guarantees, and it's going to make me do a whole bunch of extra work, but maybe people won't leave. And the truth is, you can do a lot less and charge a lot more with your current service. I've audited thousands of different offers in my day, and like most people are undercharging by 50% and doing 30% more work than they need to. So for me, it's starting with that. It's like let's actually just make the current thing simpler and more profitable before you decide to scale. Because the truth is, when I was doing sales coaching primarily, people are like, oh, well, everyone's telling me to grow as fast as possible. The money will take care of it all. But I'm like, you're not motivated to sell more of this current thing. You don't even really like the current thing you're selling in the way you're doing it. So like, let's fix that first. And that's been just a huge game changer for me.
Yeah, absolutely. We always say there's difference between running a successful business and one that you enjoy. And it sounds like you have a good idea of how to kind of merge those two.
And I love how you started with how people don't think about what their goals are when they're starting the business. And, as I've said numerous times, I have been in the unenviable position of running a business that I started that I did not like running, which I think you obviously did too from what you just said. So it's not a good place to be. And it can feel like having a tiger by the tail. So starting with that just makes so much sense.
Yeah, I mean, my 2022 was a perfect example. Like I was in 38 cities in 10 countries on 3 continents, and I was just like wherever the heck I wanted to be all year. Now, I was exhausted for for that for the travel reasons, but like I just got to crack open my laptop, take a few meetings a week, and like it was amazing to go explore the world like that and to build that. But like that doesn't come if you're on 1 hour meetings with every client twice a week. You know what I mean? Like you have to really design how you're going to operate, or else you're not going to have that flexibility.
Right.
I have to ask, what was your favorite place that year?
Budapest
Hmm.
or Cape Town, South Africa. both great for different reasons.
My sister-in-law did a remote year and traveled everywhere, and Cape Town was near the top of her list too. So
Yeah,
yes, I'm adding it to my list, you guys.
do it.
Well, it sounds like you had clear goals. Travel was one of them. Can you share a pivotal moment in your career that shaped how you approach business and how you advise others?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was in, this was 2018 or 19. I was still in Toronto, so somewhere around there. A friend of mine who I consider to be more successful, like he was like a pick something to launch and he was monetizing it within a month. Like this guy's just a monster. And we were out just walking around in the near the distillery district. And I'll never forget it. He was doing a half day workshop for a big organization. Office Depot would be the equivalent in the United States. And he was training like 30 people on how to use LinkedIn outreach for building basically building a pipeline and doing it in a unique way, in an interesting way. And it was a half day workshop, big group. And he was like, yeah, like I want to, you would typically charge like 1,700, but like I'd love to get it to like 2,200. And my brain just went, wait, no, that's missing a zero, bro. What are you talking about? Like to a company that size. So I took a step back. And again, this was someone who I thought was like running a killer business. And he's my best friend to this day. But I said, like, well, what happens if like 10% of the people that come to this thing pay attention to you? And then they deploy just 25% of what you teach them. And he's like, probably like 100 to 175,000 in extra revenue. I'm like, cool. So why are you $2,000? How are you not $10,000? Like the price is a joke. And I said it with love, but until he repriced it at 9,500, and they were like, "Oh yeah, of course." I'm like, it was probably still too little, but it was that moment of like, oh, people that are like selling a lot of stuff don't have a vision of like how to charge or how to create value or express the value of what they do. And I did like I picked it apart in 1 minute, and I was like, oh, I guess that's because I've worked with people with offers for as long as I had with, a little bit of strategy work and the agency. I've seen so many offers. So I think to share that perspective, I was like, I bet you there's more people like him that are not doing the pricing right.
Well, so let's piggyback off of that. That is one of the number one things we hear is people don't know how to price their services. So now that you have that information, you had that experience, what do you advise solopreneurs to do in terms of pricing?
Yeah, I mean, every different service prices differently. Like, obviously, a marketing engagement is different than building a website because you can attach different KPIs and different results. But here's where you have to start and where most people neglect. If you don't believe that your product and your service is worth more, like really, really, really believe it, you can't change the price. So most people will be like, okay, well, it's that time. I should, increase my price by 10%. That's the thing we do. But in order to make a big difference, like I like to say, like, what does this look like if we double the price right now? Because a lot of people are really that low. And the problem is you can't just be like, yeah, I'm gonna do it. Mike told me to do it, so I'm gonna do it. Because subconsciously, if you don't believe that there's enough value in it, that will come out. Your subconscious will block you in your sales conversations from being able to create those transactions. So you actually have to have a belief. You have to have a moment where you're like, oh wow, I'm way undercharging. And so the way that I do that, I'll take 30 seconds. I'll give you the Coles Notes version of the exercise is I make this chart. It's like 4 vertical lines, usually curved, but for the simplicity of listening to this, vertical lines. And in those columns, you have 1 month, 3 month, 1 month, 3 month, 6 month, 12 months. And I want you to close your eyes and I want you to picture what happens to this organization that you're going to sell your service to if they don't solve the problem with a vendor who's great at what they do, just like you, in those periods of time, right? So, how does it impact them, like financially, from a confidence, from an operational standpoint? There's a lot of different categories we think about, and so like what you realize is after half a year, after 12 months, if they didn't find the right vendor, like maybe they hired the wrong person 3 times and now they have no belief that it can be fixed, no progress. There's still, it's still a problem that's hampering them, or they don't find anybody and their growth stalls and now they don't have any predictability in their revenue, or, a million different things come up. But actually envisioning like a year from now, if this person doesn't solve this problem that I solve, Like, what happens to the business? And it's like the impacts are profound. As the time goes on, this gets worse and worse. And it gets to the point where like some people just go out of business because they haven't solved it. So when you realize the prolonged pain that comes with not solving this problem, it really like illuminates, well, if I'm great at it and if I can fix this thing in 30 days, like I'm going to stop all these future problems for the person. That usually is a big spark to create that belief.
Now I have a question because I think that's really cool. I love the thinking, and it's something certainly a lot of solopreneurs aren't doing. But how do you? It seems to me that there's another step, which is making sure that the prospect understands these kinds of things, right? So it's not just getting it in your head; it's then getting in your head and getting it into their head. Any thoughts on that, or?
Yeah, so it's part of the process that we do is a series of exercises that unpacks the WTF moment in you. And then the next thing is like, okay, what are the most hard-hitting things? How do we expand on them? And then how do we express them in marketing? For example, you can't say, well, if you don't solve the marketing problem, you're probably going to take this stress and frustration home. You're going to lose sleep. You might be, you might not be as connected to your family. You might be a little bit distracted from parenting. You can't be like, hey, if you don't solve this marketing with my service, you're going to be a bad dad. You can't do that. I mean, you
And
could. I don't think it's gonna work. You could try. So what we do is we take those expressions, which are truth, but we tell them in the fashion of like how other people would experience it, right? So stories about how other clients experience this, whether it's through like a case study or a testimonial. So some of the stuff you can't directly put into the marketing, but you could say, hey, I've worked with people just like you. And what they found was they got this result, but they also realized, hey, when I was at home, this is what so you can tell that story through how other people have experienced it. And that's usually like enough for them to connect the dots. I'm like, oh, I don't want to be like that guy that you were working with. So, but yes, the point is we do try and find the top 5 future pains. And then how do we express those in our marketing, whether it's through directly just because it's something we could just put there like, hey, like if you don't have consistent leads, you're not going to be able to predict revenue. You're not going to be able to, grow the business. Like those are very obvious, but the ones that are more nuanced and more personal, we tend to tell those through the stories of others.
Yeah, I'm just curious because I found that a lot of solopreneurs, because they're very good at what they do, but they're not necessarily salespeople, and maybe have never done sales, but they're very uncomfortable with kind of bringing up pain points because they feel like it's mean or something. I don't know. And do you find that? Do you find that a lot of them need to be coached into going into pain points with prospects?
Yeah. So here's what happens with people. They attach sales to this like what you see in the movies, right? Or like these bad reputation, used car
ABC,
salesmen,
always be
sketchy.
closing.
They associate it with that. And so they think that having the person express these pain points is a form of manipulation. So that's where they go. And so like my counter to that, and it's hard to dive into in a 30-second, but if I were to summarize it, it's like if what you do solves those future pains for somebody and you genuinely know that you're good at that thing, it is your responsibility to get the person to move forward with you. That's how I genuinely feel. And because if you don't, what happens, right? Because especially in marketing, like we have people come to us when we had the agency that were like, listen, I've tried 3 different companies. We did 3-month contracts. We're down 15 grand. Like, I don't even know if I believe this can work anymore. Well, if you know, and if you vet the client properly and you know what you do can fix that, then it's your responsibility to not let them drift off to the next problem because someone will sell them something, right? So knowing that, it becomes your responsibility to chime in and help. Now, if the person doesn't align perfectly with like your ideal customer or the type of person you're great at working with, fine, then let them go. That's also your responsibility, is not to sign people you can't help, but equally when you can, you got to move forward. So that comes with people need to feel like you understand them, and they need to feel like, they need to express. If you can get them to like say out loud something that they didn't really want to talk about, and they're like, oh man, this person understands me. People buy when they feel understood, right? And so you expressing that you understand where they're at through different mechanisms is very powerful in sales.
Absolutely. I always think like if you're driving down the road, you see somebody in their one of their tires, their wheels is wobbling on their car. You go, well, I don't want to bring up bad news to them. It's like, if you're a good person, you try to get up next to them and go, hey, pull over, your wheel's going to fall off. But people see people in this situation in their work and their lives or whatever and feel bad about bringing it up. So I love this. I love what you're saying, all of it.
Mhm. Well, and you talk about you're just saying you need to have an offer that actually solves the problems of your audience that other people failed fail their responsibilities in. I'm not sure if I said that sentence right, but you get what I'm saying. um, so how do you help your clients develop a dream offer, let's say, that attracts their ideal customers so they can move forward with that
Absolutely.
responsibility? To them?
Yeah, so the offer itself I think actually comes secondary to defining who it is that you're going to help. And so I think where a lot of people get stuck is they're like, "Well, I know how to do Google Ads, so somebody that needs Google Ads is my person." Right? So that's how we're going to do it. And I've never been a proponent of like you need to niche it down to like you don't have to be the Google Ads guy for plumbers, but you should be like the Google Ads guy for like home service business. Like, so I was the Google Ads guy for boring businesses. So if you didn't need content and if you didn't need a brand to sell, so like law firms fell into the same bucket as roofers because nobody cares the about story of the law firm. It's like, I need a divorce attorney. Are you that? Great. So I focused on Google Ads for boring businesses, but it's really important to make sure that they're the right type of person that you can help. And so what I do with my clients is I have them define those in at least a 10-point checklist. So for me, it's like, do they even understand the back end? Are they even capable of getting new leads? Like a lot of home service companies, I'm like, cool, if we were to double the amount of phone calls that you get, what would happen? And they're like, they'd all go to Jim's voicemail. Cool. Like when you get a lead now, where does that go? Oh, it goes into Tony's Gmail account. Like, who's tracking this? Is there a CRM? Do we know? Like, what would happen right now if I tripled your leads intake in like volume right now? And a lot of companies, they couldn't handle it. And so for me, it's like, yes, you could do it, but is it actually going to benefit them? So we actually have a vetting process for like, let's make sure that this client is someone that you can actually help and that their existing infrastructure is set up for success. Because if you're not going to build them the CRM, and you're not going to train their sales team so they're selling more than 5% of deals, like what are you getting in there and doing marketing for? So I actually think that's more important.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome because you're so right. It's like if the infrastructure is not in place, you're just spinning your wheels, and then you don't look good, right? You don't look good to the customer because, well, the sales didn't go up. So great.
Yeah.
Oh,
And a byproduct of that is when you actually ask them these questions and they're like, "Oh no, I don't have that. I don't have that." I actually say like, "Hey, listen, I don't think that you're ready for this. Here's why." I'll do it in a very kind way. Like if you can go fix these two things, I'd love for you can like, come back and almost like reapply to work with us. And what happens is a lot of solopreneurs with a service look up to the client like, oh my god, please say yes, like don't reject me, say yes, like let me in. And when you start making your client apply to you for the benefit of both you and the client, it actually changes the dynamic. A lot of my customers have their clients at the end of the call say like, hey, I would love to work with you if you'd take me on, if you would have me. And the client is saying that to them, right? And it's again, people are like, oh, is that manipulative? No, because if you jump into a working relationship with someone and they're not set up for success, they're going to blame you, and they're going to be a headache, and there're going to be a lot of extra correspondence, and it's not fun. So like, why are we doing it? You know?
Yeah. Well, so let's say you've identified your audience. We were talking about just creating that dream offer. So once you have them, how do you advise solopreneurs create that once they know who they're specifically targeting?
Absolutely. To keep it concise, whatever the shortest point from A to B is. So from I'm stuck on this thing to I now have the outcome that I want. Most people get stuck listing a whole bunch of deliverables. Well, here's the 30 things. We're going to do the keyword research, then we're going to set up the account, and then we're going to cook up the analytics. And like, I mean, nobody cares, right? So you need to develop a 3 to 5 step process. And that process, the name of each process needs to be benefit to number one, benefit to the customer. This is how we do it. And it needs to take them through a very simple way that they understand within their own ecosystem of how this is going to work for them. So if you're speaking in your own jargon, in your language, like we're gonna set up the Google CPC campaigns. They're like, I don't know what that is, right? But like, what is the outcome for the customer? And let's label that with a step. And it should be a 3 to 5 step process. And so the offer itself should feel like it should be a story. It should be this is the 3-step. You can brand it. You should brand it. Process from getting you from here to there. And when they hear it, it should be the natural progression for them in the way that the customer would need to understand it. That's what it is. I think where a lot of people get stuck is like, oh, well, these other people talk about a guarantee or, going into the ad account, 7 days a week and doing all this other crap. Like the person buying from you only cares if you're going to get them to the finish line. So what's the 4-step process that takes them to the finish line and nothing else? No more. As simple and linear as possible.
Yeah, it's so smart. You seem like you have so many processes in place. You've thrown the word out a few times. You've alluded to it in sales, marketing. What processes do solopreneurs need to put in place to be more efficient with their businesses?
Every single one. So I have a video that shows every single thing that I do. And then my VA runs my entire life now. And so here's the truth. There are going to be, within an ecosystem of your business, there's going to be at least 50 different things that need to be done to make it function, right? And the likelihood is that there's going to be 3 or 4 that you're going to be great at. And there's going to be a decent amount that you're mediocre at, and there's going to be a lot that you're crappy at. So if you don't download your brain, if you don't record these processes and then start to delegate that work, you're just going to constantly be slowed down by tasks that you want to procrastinate on or that take you way longer than they should. So I actually think the easiest way to do it is like the next time you're going to do a process, okay, this is how we upload everything into the client portal. This is how we fill out the contract and send it off. This is how we just record it. Even if it takes 45 minutes of you on Loom or on whatever tool, just record it and talk out loud as if somebody is like learning from you, and just let that 45-minute thing be your process video for now. That's not ideal. You want it to be more concise, but just get it out of your brain so that someone else can come in and do it if you suck at it. That's like the most basic way to start. And and a lot of people are like, well, then I got to like make sure everything's aligned and get all the screens ready. I'm like, no, like if you're paying somebody, especially from overseas, like a smaller amount of money per hour than you, if they have to watch a 1-hour long video and you droning on explaining how something works, like they're going to learn all of your thought processes and how everything works from that. It doesn't have to be a concise 5-minute video. Just get it into a video so that you can get it off your plate.
You are not the first person that has talked about how VAs have changed their lives and made their businesses the most efficient. Do you have any quick tips on how you can find a VA for people that are listening?
Yeah, so I think anyone can tell you the different websites, you can find them. My advice with VAs is there's no such thing as a unicorn. So there's no such thing who's your creative director and your video editor and your copywriter and your calendar manager and your inbox. It's not a thing. So if you took a list of every single task that you do and you were to assign a value to them, whether it's a $1 a value task, $10 a value task, $100 a value task, or $1,000 value task, the 100 and the thousands ones are probably the stuff that you got to keep doing. But like following up with this and filling in this document and booking your flights, like those are all $1 and $10 tasks related to how they move the business forward. You need to bucket those by category. Is it an administrative thing? Is it a finance thing? Is it a creative thing? Is it a design thing? And you need to find all the ones that you hate the most and which bucket do they most fall into. For me, it's detail-oriented administrative things. Like when I'm left to book my own travel, I show up to the airport on days where I don't have a flight. Like I'm terrible at that stuff. When I like follow-ups in my calendar, filling out forms, chasing down documents, like all that stuff is like, I'm very bad at it. I'll do one thing one time. I completely forget it exists. So, but you're not going to have someone who's good at managing your inbox and someone who's good at editing videos. It's highly unlikely. So find the bucket that's giving you the most pain and make sure all those tasks are similarly aligned so that when you bring someone on, they can succeed in that role. That's how I would think about it.
Yeah, no, that's really good advice. I wasn't planning on asking you anything related to that, but it seems like something people ask about a lot. um, so, Mike, if you could help solopreneurs create a sustainable long-term business strategy, what piece of advice would you give them?
Make your current service as profitable as possible, both financially and on time spent. So extract the value and charge what it's worth. I hate that word. Charge a premium price. If you're great at something, you should be charging a premium price because you're probably solving a premium problem for somebody. And then, operationally, back end wise, you should ask yourself, what would every task that I do look like if it took half the amount of time and half the amount of energy? I think what a lot of people do is they try and grow without simplifying how they operate. And then they get burnt out because, well, it's going to take me 30 hours a month to manage each client, how many clients can you take? Whereas if you can get that down to 10 hours per client, even if it's just you, that still gives you a lot of bandwidth, right? So get to premium pricing, simplify your back end first before you worry about scale. And that's where I'd start. And then you can kind of decide. Like a lot of people that I work with, I had a guy that was charging like $1,300 to do 12 emails a month plus the automation plus like he was doing basically like in charge of the company's marketing, email marketing, like split testing. I mean, what he was doing was crazy. And so we just got him to a point where like, cool, instead of 1,300, it was 6,000 plus 3% of top line. So he actually cut his client base in half and quadrupled his revenue. And he's like, okay, that's it for me. Like, I don't need more. I don't want more. Like we built it around, he's got 4 kids, he wants to hang out with his kids. So I think but it also in saying that, starts with the vision. Why are you chasing scale? Because that's what you hear people talking about. Like, what do you want? How do you want to spend the time? And then building out something that actually makes sense with that.
Amen.
Ding, ding, ding. And that was the correct answer, Mike. Here's well, Mike, I feel like we could listen to you talk all day. I'm so excited that you're coming on for our next Solopreneur Success Sessions. Shameless plug.
Probably be over by the time this is aired, though.
Oh, shoot. Right.
Go watch the replay.
Go join one of our premium platforms and watch the replay. But I selfishly am just so happy you are doing that. Mike, what is your favorite quote about success? We ask all of our guests this question. I'm so curious as to what yours is.
Yeah, I think success is super like widely and subjectively defined. So the thing that I always lean on when it comes to building offers, when it comes to deciding on what I'm going to do, it's around selling. And I mentioned it a little bit earlier, which is people buy when they feel understood, not when they understand you. And it's a critical reminder, even with me, like when I'm launching something new or I've got a page going up, I'm reading through it and I'm like, is this written in my language or in their language? Are the benefits written so that I sound super smart? Or is it written in a way where it's going to be like, oh my God, I need that. I want that. And it spills over into so many different facets. So for me, that's the one I focus on.
This is one of my Post-it notes.
What's in it for them?
What's in it for them? And that's, something that we have to remember. And people don't. They know it, and then they go write something, and it's from their perspective. It's so hard.
It is. Well, Mike, I feel like you've dangled a carrot during this episode. There are probably so many listeners that are like, okay, I need more from this guy. Where can people find you if they want to learn more?
Yeah, absolutely. Best place would just be my website, Moll, MOLL.co. I've got a podcast and a newsletter and all those things, but people consume in different ways. And so if there's something that seems interesting or attractive to you over there, that's where you'll find everything.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. This has been wonderful.
Yeah, thanks
for having me.
Good to see you.
Listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. As always, we would love that 5-star review. Please subscribe on your favorite podcast platform, including YouTube, and we will see you next time on The Aspiring Solopreneur.